Welcome back to the Reier on YouTube channel, where it is time once again for Second Helping, the show of choice for fans and followers of the number one league in all of collegiate athletics, the Southeastern Conference. Travis Reier, alongside my great friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Beaird. Brent, we have put a wrap on the 2025 SEC spring meetings. We'll get into some notes and nuggets from that event, including probably both of our very favorite items to come from that annual event in Destin, Florida. That, of course, being the week 2, the week 3 kickoff times that we get for Southeastern Conference football, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's a lot to get into with the SEC meetings, but it's almost like the magazines, Trav, which I'll update during the podcast. It is a rite of spring, shall we say, and people want to know those kickoff times, and Trav, they're not. Some of them aren't real happy with the times.
Oh wow, we'll get into a rundown. If you missed those earlier, we're live, by the way, on a Thursday night. So if you're checking in here live with us on Reier on YouTube, we certainly appreciate you doing that. Jump into the comments if you got a question, a comment, maybe even a suggestion for Second Helping. But sure, we'll get into more of those recently released kickoff times and network designations for SEC football for the early weeks of the upcoming season. But man, still so much talk about the potential for a 16-team playoff, an expanded playoff going from 12. What does that mean for the Southeastern Conference in terms of 9 conference games, perhaps, in the future? These are all things we thought would be popular talking points during these SEC meetings. But you know what I didn't necessarily have? I didn't necessarily have the ADs and the coaches being on a little bit of a different wavelength when it came to a potential format for a 16-team playoff.
And what Travis is talking about is the ADs in that 16 looking at a 4-4-2-2 model, obviously meaning 4 for the SEC, 4 for the Big Ten, 2 for the ACC, and 2 for the Big 12, and 1 for the non-Power 4. And then the coaches wanting a 5-11 is what they would like to do, and that obviously is talking about one automatic bid for ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and SEC, and then 11 at-large bids, which, look, if you've got 11 at-large bids, if you're like the SEC or the Big 10, man, you could get 5 or 6 of those, frankly. But I mean, Trav, did that? It kind of surprised me, yes, with you, that they're not on the same page. And talking with some people today, I think the other surprise was, I mean, you're there with coaches, ADs, and presidents for 3 days, and people are asking some honest questions like, why did they not get more done than they did?
Yeah, it does. It feels like in some ways we're further away coming out of SEC meetings than we were going in. In terms of having kind of a foreseeable resolution about what this thing is even going to look like. Now, look, coach is coach. So whereas coaches might want a certain format, at the end of the day, they're going to coach when they're supposed to coach the teams that they coach. And so this will ultimately come down to the pay grade, not necessarily the pay grade, because hell, we got head coaches making a good bit more than a lot of ADs, but structurally, I guess, in the hierarchy of an athletic department and with a university, those decisions will be made beyond the head coaching ranks. But it all leads me back to the question I got right here at the bottom of the screen right now. Is it football season yet? Can we just play football games?
Well, yeah, I agree with that totally. And we'll certainly get into some of the calendar. But I think the intriguing things, too, that I wanted to get your opinion on is that there are some things floating out there. And all this stuff is kind of intertwined together. When we get the format, I think after that, we will get, does the SEC go 8 or do they go 9? Coaches like certainly some of them talked about having a game every year with the Big Ten, and then the play-in situation. Now, Trev,
Wild.
Trev, here's your reality to this. Now, look, I love football, and if they played 100 games, I'd watch all of them.
Yeah.
But I learned this from you a long time ago. There's only so much you can do, and my concern and question, I guess, with this is, okay, if you're going to go to 9, you make more money. But if you go to 9, you're going to lose one of your sisters of the poor. But then what about playing a Big Ten team? And then the most intriguing thing of all that people, I think, like, but it also concerns them, is this championship Saturday where the top 2 teams in the SEC will play each other as usual in the SEC championship game. And the next 4 teams would have 2 games to decide who else would be going to the playoffs. But Trev, when you think about that, 9 SEC games, a game in the Big Ten, and are you going to play one more? And all that's even before you get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to consider, and I know there's a lot of money at stake. And if you're the SEC, I guess what you're still trying to figure out after last year, albeit in a 12-team format, is, are we going to be rewarded for playing those games?
Absolutely.
Because the sense that you got from the SEC after last season was that they weren't really rewarded for some of that. Not that Alabama's problems, for example, were necessarily in the non-con. Took care of business in the non-con. It was more within the league. So those are the things you gotta kind of figure out. And in some ways, this season we're going to have some of that within the SEC because Texas is going to go to Ohio State. Michigan is going to play Oklahoma. Alabama is going to play Wisconsin. So we're already going to have some pretty good Big Ten SEC flavor this season. And then even beyond that, with some of these teams, they're going to play at least a reputable additional non-con. Alabama's going to go to Florida State, for example.
Absolutely.
So in some ways, you're already going to see some of that this year. But the play-in part of all this, the potential for that is just semi-mind-blowing for me. I know it was kind of laid out as terms of how it would have played out in 2024 if there would have been play-in games beyond the championship game of Texas and Georgia. I guess you would have had Alabama, LSU in a rematch.
How about
kind
that?
Of a 4-5, and then what was it? South Carolina,
in Tennessee
in a 3-6 game. Pretty crazy to consider. And I'm like you. And then trying to make this all work with a transfer portal set up. And I know Kirby Smart talked about this in Destin. Hey, we can talk playoff and we can talk, 9 games and all this, but what the coaches really want to know is, how are we going to deal with this portal deal? We're going to have one window. We're going to have 2. When are we going to have them? The potential for OTAs in college football in June. And as Kirby pointed out, that's great. But then when are we going to have our camps that we usually have in June from a recruiting perspective? And by the way, you know what else we've been seeing is official visits coming up. I mean, we're about to hit a huge stretch in June, which used to be January years ago, of official visits. It doesn't feel like anything's getting figured out, Brent.
No.
They're trying to move things to months where we're already loaded.
Oh yeah. Well, the middle of June is when the commissioners are meeting again, and maybe without all the hoopla that you've got in Destin, that they'll be able to get something done.
And that's a question for you right there. We talked about this last week, how SEC spring meetings used to be this quiet, sleepy little event. It was really more of like a getaway for the ADs, and and they could get together and really have some fun, if any. Talk about issues within the league and things like that. But now with it sort of as a pseudo media days, everything gets amped up. It becomes this sort of stump that Greg Sankey and commissioners get on to talk about their schedule
Mm-hmm.
strength and everything. Did you like that, by the way? How much that was harped on by the SEC this week in terms of the gauntlet? I thought we already knew that. I don't know. I guess
Yeah.
maybe after only getting 3 into the playoff, there was a sense of we got to reinforce this message.
Well, yeah. But Trev, does this league need to do that?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, yeah, that I felt like they were a team short in the playoff. They should have
Yeah.
had 4.
Yes.
But the sort of reaction to that, it felt like, especially this week in Destin, it felt a
Mm-hmm.
little bit below to me the SEC. I get Sankey protecting his league. I can appreciate that.
Oh yeah.
But this was kind of a one-off last season. Now, if it happens again, I could understand it maybe a little bit better, but it felt a little bit like an overreaction. Although, again, I understand where Sankey's coming from because that's his job.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there are 2 dates here we need to pay attention to. One would be there's a really there's kind of a week before the season begins where the coaches want to be able to have this, and the ads and the presidents, they want, are we going 8 or 9? And
Yeah.
if we're going to do it, when are we going to do it?
Right.
And then December 1st is really the deadline for the playoff situation. When are we going to expand? How are we going to do it? How many teams are we going to? Now, obviously, all this and the big thing that kind of hovers over all this is all the contracts are up for renewal next year.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it's going to be 26 through 31 is when all this is going to be happening. So the logical question is, okay, if we're going to play 9 games, we need to go ahead and make a decision because we really need to get that schedule going next year,
Right.
in order to get that going. So they're just some.
But you don't have clarity on the playoff.
Well, you don't
Moving forward.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
Your motivation to go ahead and make that move is got to be softened a good bit, by that reality right now. And I go back to sort of things that we've talked about in the past, and I always like to get your thoughts on a myriad of topics as it relates to Southeastern Conference football. And so, some of the things we've heard in relation to, 8 or 9 games, has to do with rivalries and how they could be impacted.
Yes.
How did you
Absolutely.
sort of take what we heard this week from a standpoint of, okay, we can go to this sort of approach, but you might be saying goodbye to the Iron Bowl. You
Yeah.
might be saying goodbye to Georgia, Florida, or some of these games, Brent.
Well, I think so, and that's a great point. Great question. I think some of the coaches and the ads, when they were asked about that, I mean, they were asked about Alabama and Auburn. I mean, the people who were asked about it kind of, and they should, dug their heels in and said, we don't want that to go by the wayside. But at the same time, and I hope it's not an either or. I mean, Trav, do you give up Alabama, Auburn, or you give up Alabama, Tennessee?
Well, I mean, I can see a scenario where it gets reduced to 1.
Yeah.
You either have Alabama, Auburn, or Alabama, Tennessee. And if you don't know, within those fan bases, well, certainly the Alabama fan base, you can get a very mixed sort of response to which of those 2 is actually Alabama's biggest rival.
Right.
And really it can have to do with what area of the state you're even in, or how old the Alabama fan is that you're talking to. In terms of a brand, the Iron Bowl is the biggest, but it's the 3rd Saturday in October too, with Tennessee and Alabama.
Right.
So, I mean, but I can see where it gets narrowed down to a one or the other, with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these,
Mm-hmm.
and not having the multiple. Hell, I
Right.
mean, there's a LSU doesn't want to lose Alabama. I
No.
mean, I know
No.
to me, LSU Ole Miss, I think there's a lot of people. LSU
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss is kind of like Alabama Tennessee to some LSU
Yeah.
fans,
Yeah.
but to a lot of LSU fans, it's still LSU Alabama.
Sure.
That's more of the game.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you've also got Florida LSU and Florida Tennessee.
Yeah.
That
I
is
remember when Florida and Auburn used to play pretty much every
sure
year.
did. Oh yeah, absolutely. And there were some humongous upsets.
Big
Terry
games.
Bowden had one of
Yeah.
the biggest upsets, in the history of that series in
I
Gainesville.
think that was 94 in
Yeah.
game. Frank Sanders in the corner
Yeah.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
Nix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But from Bo Nix, that's right.
Well, Bo Nix's
No, I'm
dad,
sorry.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick Nix.
That's how old we're getting. He
Yeah,
was
it
Bo
really
Nix's
is, isn't it?
dad. But no, I mean, these are the things that, you need to go ahead and kind of prepare yourself if you're a college football fan, because I mean, we've already had the top taken off of a lot of this.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
toothpaste is out of the tube in a lot of ways, and there's more still. Now, all the toothpaste isn't even out of the tube yet.
Oh no.
There's still more
No.
that's going to be squoze out of this thing in the next year or so.
And Trav, did you catch Kirby's comment about him saying there are players who
Yeah.
are getting 25? Trav, it wasn't 25,000 a year.
A month.
It
Yeah.
was 25,000 a month. And what he was basically saying was, we're babysitting these kids
Yeah.
by paying them that kind of money, and that raised a lot of eyebrows. Now, to me, the thing they really need to jump on is, I know a lot of these bigger decisions will be made by the ADs and the commissioners, but Kirby really jumped on, and I understand this, the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And frankly, and look, I don't want to make college football the NFL, but the NFL has done a lot of things right. And one of those things right is having, help me on this, it is having free agency just once a year.
Well, just having a calendar.
Yeah, absolutely.
College football has no calendar right now.
No, they really
no calendar. They had
No.
a calendar, and then the portals came in, and everything else just blew up. It's been
Yes.
blown up.
Yeah.
And there's the reconstruction has not really even gotten started yet.
No.
And so, but
no,
you're continuing the machine. The machine runs on.
it does.
And
does.
it's basically the steering cable was cut, and it's veering right now. And so, with statements like the one Kirby made, sometimes I kind of take them with a grain of salt, because coaches aren't immune to hyperbole. Okay. And especially when it comes to who's paying what, who's getting what, and all those things.
Right.
So I still, that's almost one of those, and understanding the money is out there. I get that. I mean, I understand that.
Yeah.
But it's probably a very, very select few.
Oh yeah.
If there are those, but any is a lot right now. And it's gonna draw headlines and certainly a lot of buzz. But it all takes me back, Brent, to just the question: is it football season yet? And it is not. Football season for it to be June, and it's basically June now, has never felt farther away to me.
Yeah, I agree.
At this point in the off season than it feels right now. I mean, the football season feels 7 years away right now.
Yeah.
After just the last 3 days.
Right. Well, but Trav, they really need to look. They don't have to solve everything, but there are some things. Okay.
Just some fundamental structure.
Yes. Just
pour some footers. I'm not saying the house and the pool doesn't have to be dried in yet, but can I just get some footers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe an A-frame.
Yeah.
Like if we're building a house. I don't need the outdoor fireplace in just yet.
Right.
Just some damn footers.
Yeah. But you would think now with that, you would think by the first of the year, they've got to decide on Is it going to be 8 or 9? One transfer for portal or another one?
So what you're telling me is, and we talked about this, was we really didn't want to go through another football season with so much of the discussion about the
Yes.
direction of the sport. But
Yes.
what you're telling me is, based on this time frame, that's exactly what we're
Yeah.
about to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's the thing that people get concerned about, and they kind of throw up their hands with on this. Now, the other thing going on that no one has any control over is Judge Wilkins signing off on this House versus Nation thing, and then to get that thing going. So, but it's like you said, you can't do everything. But in the next few months, you've got to know 16, 8 or 9 transfer portal, Trav. If they just decided those 3 things, that will be major progress compared to what's going on right now.
And it also speaks to how just decimated the NCAA is now.
Yeah, yes,
Because there's nothing
yes.
coming from there.
No,
Really, it's all about the commissioners and the Power Four and how they decide they're going to proceed. We know how we're going to proceed, though, Brent, in the first couple of 3 weeks of the season for the most part at this point. So let's at least talk about something related to the actual sport of college football. And we hit on this last week, the likelihood that we would see more of these times coming. This is my favorite thing about SEC spring meetings anymore is we get more kickoff dates. Now, some of these we already had for week 1 when you talk about, but we do even for week 1 have more specific designations for time, kickoffs, and networks. I guess Texas, Ohio State was interesting because we found out now that there was talk about trying to play that game on Sunday, the 31st. I think you had mentioned that, but it will be played Texas at Ohio State from the Horseshoe, noon Eastern on Saturday, August the 30th. That'll be a big noon kickoff on Fox.
Yes. And now game day was supposed to be there. We've heard since that they'll probably be at Tallahassee for Florida State in Alabama for Lee Corso's finale, which will be interesting. But yes, that's I mean, that's the biggest game we think in this point. But I'm telling you, Trav, that Saturday night LSU Clemson thing. I think I'm more excited about that than I am Texas Ohio State, frankly.
Yeah. And Brian Kelly this week, didn't he say this is the best team he's had at LSU so far? Yeah.
I'd be careful with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. We'll see.
Well, and again, LSU's lost. Yeah, they've lost 5 openers in a row.
Yeah.
Trev, how much pressure's on Kelly going to Death Valley?
I'll say this for LSU though, they haven't played San Jose State in some openers. We talked about that. A couple with Florida State, USC, and Vegas last year. Now you got to beat SC last year. If you're LSU, those 2 Florida State losses were pretty understandable. As painful as they might have been, both of them really. Really though, it's week 2 and week 3 where we had more of the light shined on kickoff times and networks. And so Saturday, September the 6th, after Texas travels to Ohio State, they will host the Spartans of San Jose State. That'll be a noon Eastern kickoff on either ABC or ESPN. Mike Elko, that same day at 12:45 Eastern, will host another Aggie. The Utah State Aggies will visit the Texas A&M Aggies. That'll be an early kickoff on Saturday, September the 6th. You got conference play kicking off on the 6th there in week 2 with Ole Miss traveling to Kentucky. Pretty big game early in the season for Mark Stoops after the last year or 2, right?
There's no doubt about that. And again, Stoops with another new quarterback and Calzada, who is at A&M. They really badly need a some early wins. I'm and people aren't so much worried about Stoops being fired as much as they are. Trav, is Stoops just kind of tired of it all, and does he want to? Does he really kind of want to do something else?
Yeah, it might almost be mutually beneficial. We'll see how this season goes for the Wildcats, but that's a tough SEC opener, even with Ole Miss going through a lot of changes of its own. But then more of an ability Ole Miss seems to have to hit the NIL, hit the transfer portal, and reload across the board, not just at quarterback, which, Ole Miss, it's not going to be a transfer quarterback situation. It doesn't appear. Whereas Kentucky, that's just been sort of the ongoing theme there behind center. Also on Saturday, September the 6th, Kansas at Mizzou. I like the potential of that one. 3:30 Eastern on ESPN2.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Missouri without Brady Cook. That's going to be interesting to see where they're going to go. And Trav, to me, maybe the game of the day as far as the significance of it, Michigan at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. Trav, how bad does Venables need to win a helmet game like that?
Really, really needs to pick up the W there, especially with the changes at quarterback, and then also the offensive side of the ball in general, commitment that OU has made in a couple different areas in the backfield for sure. Michigan needs it too. Michigan with a strong finish. I mean, you beat Ohio State and you beat Alabama back to back. That usually means you played for something at the end of the season. Not so much for this Michigan team, but feels like some momentum anyway, perhaps, going into that matchup with OU in Norman. Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech, also in that primetime window. ACC network for that one. Hokies and the Doors from Lane Stadium in Blacksburg, 7:30 kickoff. Arizona State at Mississippi State, also at 7:30 on the 6th of September. That game takes on a little bit of a different light after how we saw Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, and that great team he had. No Scattaboo for Arizona State heading to Starkville, but boy, Jeff Levy could use a win of any kind. SEC win obviously would be nice, but this would be a great opportunity for State to maybe sort of show some signs of moving forward in year 2 under Levy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trav, as we look at week 3, I mean, obviously, we'll get into Wisconsin, Alabama, and the kickoff time with that. But the thing that really grabs my attention, also along with Georgia, Tennessee, is Oklahoma going to Temple. Now, no, this game's not Norman. This game is at Temple.
Philly.
I'm guessing.
Wonder if they're playing that at the Link, the Eagles Stadium.
They are.
Yeah,
yes,
well,
correct.
It's kind of like Alabama going to USF a couple years. This is probably what, a 2-for-1, kind of like Alabama USF was, I would guess.
Got to be, doesn't it? It's got to be.
Might be.
Yeah.
But interesting. You're right. You don't typically see that. What about Georgia, Tennessee?
Man.
Early in week 3.
Yes.
That feels like Georgia, Tennessee from the 90s.
It really does.
You would see, like Peyton Manning versus Robert Edwards, the running back for Georgia at the time, with Mike Bobo behind center back around 95, 96 or so, somewhere in that time frame. That's an interesting slot because that game's been played a little bit later in recent years.
And the thing that really sticks out on that game is, Trav, if you're Tennessee, do you want you're breaking in a new quarterback? And I know some people have argued the same thing about Gunnar Stockton at Georgia, but at Tennessee, you're breaking in a quarterback. Do you want him facing that Georgia D that early in the season?
Yeah, and you're replacing some other pieces on that offense too, not just the quarterback situation. So Stockton, as we talked about, has had that benefit of the end of the year starts and game action
Yes.
for the Dogs that I think should benefit him quite nicely. Georgia, man, they've got a September, don't they? They get Alabama, I think, in Athens to close out the
Yeah,
month
they do.
or
Yeah.
around that time frame. So
Mhm.
we're going to learn a lot about the Dogs very, very early in the season. What about Florida LSU? Early. Now that one's been a little bit later in recent years. This one's going to be a hot Saturday night in Baton Rouge.
It
The
really is.
Gators and LSU, measuring stick game, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly says this is the best team he's had at LSU. We're going to find out. Billy Napier, the expectation is going to be that Florida is going to be in the mix for
Mhm.
conference and CFP consideration. It's the kind of game that ought to tell us a lot in that regard.
Yeah, and DJ Lagway and how he'll be progressing at that point. Man, live for week Trev for week 3. Do you remember an SEC schedule
No.
that is this potent for that early in the season?
Well, with this kind of mix and conference,
Yeah,
non-conference and conference mix, because Texas A&M goes to Notre Dame at
yeah.
7:30 on that same Saturday night. So in that 7 from 3:30
At night,
on,
really?
you're gonna have Georgia, Tennessee, Florida,
Mhm.
LSU, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Arkansas at Ole Miss, Vanderbilt at South Carolina could
Yeah.
have
Oh,
potential.
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a heck of a slate, and as you said earlier, you're going to crank things up with whiskey at
Mhm.
Alabama. That's going to be an 11 a.m. local time kickoff from Tuscaloosa. The Badges are going to get the 100% West Central Alabama in mid-September weather experience, Brent.
Now I know you've been all over the planet in some of your travels, but Trav, I mean, and I'm just being realistic here. If you're Wisconsin, and look, I have no doubt it gets hot up there too, but Trav, how in the world do you prepare for the heat and humidity? I'm
You
not sure
don't.
there's any way you can do that, is it?
You don't. You just hope those commercial timeouts give you a little extra time under those
Yeah, yeah.
cooling fans. And it
Mhm.
was an early kick last year from Madison, but a little different weather
Yeah.
early in the
Yes.
season in Madison as compared to Tuscaloosa. So it shouldn't be easy for Wisconsin in a multitude of ways. And boy, even for Alabama being far more acclimated to the conditions, 3:30 Eastern in Tallahassee
I
in
know.
your opener, and
Yes.
then you get
Yes.
noon Eastern against Wisconsin on September the 13th. Going to be crispy. Going to be
Yes.
a little crispy for those Alabama fans um, as week 3 moves along. Any other games that you've seen on these releases that maybe stood out to you? I think for teams like Florida, it's huge because even
It is.
USF in
It
week
is.
2, you
Mhm.
don't need to trip up there.
No.
And
No.
teams like USF, if they're going to be dangerous, I think even Alabama found this out with
Mhm.
USF the last couple
Mhm.
years. USF can be problematic early in the season
Yeah.
before the attrition and before the depth really comes into play. So, what about some of these games that stand out to you, Brent?
Even on that first weekend, I like that Virginia Tech South Carolina game on Sunday. That will be at 3 p.m. Now, Trev, I believe that game's in the Dome in Atlanta, so that will make a
Yes, it
that
is.
that's going to make a big difference
Yep.
in that game. Certainly, and look, Virginia Tech. We just mentioned Tennessee. They play Vanderbilt too
Yeah.
in September. But and look, I'm going to be extremely interested. And we talked about this already, so I won't belabor the point here. Try this Auburn at Baylor game on Friday night, the 29th.
Yeah.
It's fascinating game on Fox. Hell, man, Lime, that is a big game for Hugh, is it not?
It is a big game for Hugh. They're all big, I think, for Hugh at this point. But Auburn, if it can navigate that road game at Baylor to get things going, then the Tigers are looking at Ball State. in a home opener the following week,
Mm-hmm.
and then South Alabama. So get by Baylor on the road, and you're looking at 3-0, which is the kind of start you would think Hugh Freeze needs going into year 3. So a lot of fun matchups in those first 3 weeks. We're going to talk about them extensively as we move throughout this offseason and get closer to the start of the 2025 college football season. You know what else has been big here of late too is SEC basketball. Some teams getting some really good news on the returnee front. I know with Alabama late last night, LeBaron Philon, the outstanding point guard, in a surprise to a lot of folks because he had previously said he was done. He was going to the NBA. Actually withdraws his name from the NBA draft. He's going to be back with Aiden Holloway in that backcourt and Latrell Wrightsell there at Alabama. So that was huge for Nate Oates. Boy, you look at Florida and the potential for a repeat with Condon and some of the guys they're getting back that you've learned about here in the last few days. Auburn has gotten some good news on that front. So from a basketball perspective, Brent, it's been kind of newsy even for this time of year, and it kind of tells you where the SEC is now with hoops.
Well, and obviously the deadline for the NBA has come and gone, but then they needed to make decisions of that. Listen, I was talking about this Philon thing last night. People say, well, how much will it help him coming back? I mean, Philon's a guy to where, I mean, Philon's capable of scoring, let's just say the last, 6 to 10 points in a ball game himself.
Yeah, he is.
I think Philon coming back, Trav, could give them 2 or 3 additional wins that maybe they wouldn't have had without him.
Yeah, I think Alabama in the preseason polls before last night, you were going to see around 10th.
Yes.
8 to 12. I think with Philon coming back now, they move back to 4 to 6.
Yeah,
somewhere in that neighborhood because he can have certainly that kind of impact, no doubt about it. Brent, anything else before we get out of here on a Thursday night?
Well, I give everybody a magazine update here real quick.
There we go, mags.
The Athlon is out this week. Now it's going to be trimmed down about 450 words per team. Trav, you and I have written a little bit in our career for the media. Wouldn't you have loved to have a 450 word limit, but what some of the stuff we've done in the past?
Yeah, I could have gone to bed at 2 a.m. instead of 4 back in the day, writing those magazines.
Yeah. So Athlon's out this week, and next week will be the National Lindy's will be out, and then July 4th, we will have Phil Steele. So that's a little bit of a update along that line. So, but I will say this with, I mean, man, there's just something every day or every other day in football and basketball. I remember just kind of yawning through May and June and just, hoping that anything would happen. So, brother, we don't have that problem anymore, do we?
Oh my gosh. Like I said, I mean, SEC spring meetings used to be just, hey, catch up, play some golf. I mean, you would have coaches and ADs playing golf in Destin, and maybe they still do, but it's nothing like that anymore.
But Trav, before we go, I know your YouTube is going well. Let us know about some of the stuff you were doing on that with golf, and music and some other stuff. and Trav, everybody wants to know about a come in preview for the summer for Pops.
Yeah, we're going to the beach with Pops on that annual trip coming up. I checked in on him today. Pops is good. I took him some smoked kingfish dip. And so he got some crackers right out and got right into that. He loves the college softball too, by the way. What a game today earlier with Oklahoma and Tennessee.
Really?
A couple of SEC teams. So he loves the softball. So he is right now, he's in heaven. His first games come on around noon. He watches all day, all night. And Pops is doing well. Pops is hanging in there.
Yeah. And is he any more excited about his Gators at this
A
point?
little more, I'd say he is. He didn't like his Gators softball team getting shut out by
Yeah,
Texas
I'm
earlier
sure.
today. But I think he won't admit it because he doesn't want to set himself up to be disappointed. I think his whole thing is he badmouths the Gators, keeps the standards and the expectations low. And then if they exceed those, then he's pleasantly surprised. So that's kind of his approach, you know.
Yeah.
That's Pops. Well, all right, Brent, as always, man, enjoy it right here on Reier on YouTube. For those of you out there that haven't subscribed to Reier on YouTube, hit that subscribe button right now. Hit us with a like if you don't mind. That would help us out here on the show tremendously as well. Brent, look forward to doing it again soon.
Me too, bud. Always enjoy it. Take care. Have a great week.
Absolutely. For Brent Beaird, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us right here on Reier on YouTube for Second Helping. And until next time, so long, everybody.